Hello, my name is Sullivan Madden, and in this video, I'll be showing how I restored a 1934 Rockola World Series pinball machine. Here are some photos of the pinball machine when I first received it. I began the restoration by removing the metal pieces on the playfield. I made a styrofoam board and embedded the pieces in the styrofoam so I would know where they belong, and this way I could keep track of them. I bagged and tagged any item that did not go on that styrofoam. An added benefit to recording this step was that I could rewatch the video to see where different pieces belong. The next step was cleaning the infield. I took Novus 2 and used paper towels to clean the dirt that had built up over the years. It took a lot of elbow grease to get all the dirt out, but it was so worth it. After cleaning the infield, I started to clean the green part that guides the balls. I went on to putty this after cleaning it because it had lots of chips and dents in it. I tried to put the bolts and faceplates from the legs in a cola bath as they were showing signs of rust and I wanted to get rid of the rust. The cola bath helped with rust but did not help with getting rid of the tarnish on the metal. To remove the tarnish and polish the metal pieces, I found that WD-40 and steel wool were the best combination to remove the tarnish. When I was ready to polish, I would use polishing gloves, but I opted to use buffing wheels later on in the restoration as they worked better than the gloves. I took a break from the restoration as I was at school, and I came back ready to work. I took apart the coin slide. I had planned to fix the coin slide so it accepted coins, but I couldn't figure out how to make it take a coin and opted to let it operate without coins, as that was more convenient for the player. After removing the coin slide, I began to glue up the cabinet and fix some warped wood that had fallen apart over the years. I waited as long as I could, but it was time for me to take apart the field disc mechanism. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to make it work and make it rotate on its own, and I was dreading taking it apart, but I had to. As I was taking it apart, I got frustrated that the field disc would not come out, so I made a big mistake. I started hitting it with a hammer. I should have walked away and come back, but I kept going. I ended up breaking 2 arms on the mechanism, and I would pay for the mistake I had made. My first attempt to fix this was using 5-minute epoxy. This sort of worked. It held the pieces together, but broke on me a few days later. I'll share how it was fixed later in the video, but at the moment, I had no idea how I was going to fix it. I was sick of trying to fix the arms on the mechanism, so I started working on the marquee. I ordered a replacement paper marquee from Buckwerx.com. They specialize in restorations of this sort. I used this paper to get a general idea of the dimensions and studied multiple images to figure out how to make the marquee. I went to school again and came back to the machine. I took a break from working on it because I was honestly too embarrassed with breaking the arms of the mechanism. I realized I had to restore it whether it was working or not. I started trying to fix the arms. I had a friend come by and try to weld it, but he just melted the metal as it was cheap pot metal. I ended up getting an aluminum bar and used that to make a new arm. At this point, I stopped recording. I was ashamed and worried it would never work. I reassembled the mechanism and heavily lubricated it, and it worked. After that, I went ahead with the restoration and started recording again. I started cleaning and polishing the nails and rails so I could eventually reassemble the playfield. This is the application of a reproduction outs counter sticker. The original was too beat up to read. And this is another part from Buckwerx.com. It was time to reassemble the playfield. I was really excited to put it back together so that I could play pinball and start troubleshooting. As you may notice, the field disc had a new sticker on it. I did this off camera, but all I did was sand it down and then apply the sticker. This sticker is also from Buckwerx. After reassembling the playfield, it was time to paint the cabinet. I used a paint recipe from Buckwerx.com. It does a good job at mimicking the paint and really restores the machine to how it would have looked as it came off the production line over 80 years ago. I finished the marquee off camera, but all I did was use a chamfer router and glue the wood to the plywood board. In this segment, I'm gluing the paper marquee onto the marquee board. I then installed the marquee to the back of the pinball machine. I had to locate the holes, so I placed nails in the original holes and pressed the backing into the nails to make an indent where I needed to drill a hole. Then I screwed the marquee onto the back. I started to install the cabinet hardware so that the game would be playable. It was time for troubleshooting. Mark Gibson has a restoration blog that shows some common issues machines experience. The arm on the reload lever was not extending far enough, and the gear that spins the field disc did not have enough power. So by adding this fender washer, it ensures that the gear is wound up enough to play. I actually had to go on and cut the washer down with a grinder because it would rub on some other components. I originally lubricated the disc with WD-40, but I realized that's not a real lubricant. So I went and installed a liberal amount of graphite. The disc spun very well after that. After the application, I had to put the assembly back together. This gives a good idea of how annoying the field disc assembly is. Another thing I did to troubleshoot was I extended the length of the spring so that I could increase the force and make it easier for the field disc to move. Then I reassembled all the necessary pieces on the playfield that had been removed so the field disc could come out. I tested the game after that and was very happy with how well it was working. I had to continue with troubleshooting. The balls wouldn't reload, and the reason was that an anti-cheat measure had been left on. After that, there was another issue with the fender washer getting in the way, and that's why it was grinded down. This is me playing the game and troubleshooting. I joked that I would play a lot before it was done, but I had no idea I would play this much just to get the game in tune. After I had the game tuned up, it was time to apply these reproduction stickers. They're also from Buckwerx. This guy literally sells everything. I didn't like how the nails were all over the place, so I went back and straightened them in line so they would look better. The next thing to do was get the legs back on it. I enlisted my brother to help me get the legs back on, and I moved the machine inside. The final step was to install the tempered glass. I'm really happy with how this went, and I learned a lot of lessons during this restoration. I have to give a shout out to Nate Thompson and Mark Gibson. Nate Thompson runs Buckwerx.com, and without his help and support, I would never be able to finish this, as it took a lot of replacement parts for this machine. Mark Gibson has a photo restoration log of his machine, and that was invaluable. It has so much detail on how to restore the machine. I referred to that website at every point of the restoration. It goes into a lot more detail than I do in this video, so if you want more detail, I highly recommend visiting his site. It's linked in the description. Thanks for sticking around for the restoration.